Welcome, everyone. We are in our time, we're just on the other side of that Aries full moon. So happy full moon. And we're going to
Mm.
start off with just taking 3 deep breaths together. So go ahead and close your eyes if that feels good. Feel your sits bones in your chair and the floor. And let's take 3 deep breaths and let your energy rest in your solar plexus if that feels
Mm.
good for you.
Mm.
Okay, first breath. Second breath. And third breath.
Mm.
And then I'm going to pass it down to Erin to presence the astrology that's happening right now.
Woo! How's everybody doing? This week was kind of insane. We had that full moon in Aries, which full moons mean there's opposition between sun and moon. So they are as far apart as they could be in the sky, and yet they're making eye contact with each other. They're wanting to have a conversation, but if you kind of track the cycle of the moon, you will notice around full moon times like this, it can really pull on the energy of relationships. And then we're already in Aries and Libra energy, which is so relational. So it's feeling, how do you feel inside of your body in the different relationships in your world? This moon was unique because the moon itself, which can really, I mean, it rules the tides, right? So it really gets us in touch with our emotional waters and what's happening inside of our emotional spaces. The moon portion of this full moon was merging with the planet Chiron and the planet Eris. So Chiron's really, really going to activate and did activate any old stories around feeling like people in your world are abandoning you or rejecting you. Betrayal can be in there. And the tone of Eris on this, they call her the dark goddess of discord and chaos. But if you really feel into her myth, I encourage you to even read her myth if it calls to you. The reason why they said that about her is because she unapologetically told the truth. And as the truth came into light, that did create some discord and chaos with the others that were involved in the story and in the situation. So I want to pause a second right there and just let yourself feel, especially in the solar plexus center and the lower body. What was coming up for you over the last week? Were there stories around you feeling like important people in your world aren't seeing you, aren't there for you in the way that you want them to be? Were you feeling that kind of pull of hear me, where it gets kind of clingy, it gets kind of codependent? Maybe it was sort of the opposite of that space where you felt other outside of you really pulling for your attention, like, don't abandon me, hear me, but maybe you didn't have the capacity to hold what they were hoping you would hold. And so then there's this energy of having to sit with the feelings around disappointing people in your world or letting them down as you stand in your truth, Aries, your fire, Aries. So just breathe there for a second. Hmm. We don't need to make either one of those scenarios a problem because it's actually not a problem at all. We want to bring in some of that Eris medicine. What is your truth in the situation? So for some of us, that's going to look like this is huge invitation to step even deeper into locating where you are inside yourself. What part of you is feeling abandoned? And then you get to invite that part into your own loving awareness. And there's no rush with this. This is a literal, like, lifelong lesson. At the same time, because the nodes of the moon are also in these signs from now through January, like, we have a really big opportunity to get some clarity on those pieces of us. I also want a presence. That's one end of the sky, moon merging with Aries and Chiron. Sorry, Eris and Chiron. On the other end of this polarity, there's the sun. The sun's the brightest point in the sky. It's the life force energy. And the sun was actually merging with an asteroid goddess in this same full moon space. And her name is Juno or Hera, depending on which version of, your myth you're reading. I love Juno. She's been a huge ally for me in my own story, but they call her the goddess of soul contracts or partnerships. Sometimes marriage falls there. And it's because in certain versions of her myth, they're absolutely yes and true. It's like she's married to Zeus. He cheats on her. There's all this infidelity. So she's jealous. And they kind of paint her in like lots of jealousy. And she's got wounds around rejection too and abandonment, obviously. But if you dig a little bit deeper into her story and you find the source, they actually called her the cow-eyed maiden, and she ruled sovereign as queen with no counterpart. This is huge for us in our stories and in our evolutions right now, because that was where she began. And so it's like the very sun in our sky. As all of these stories are coming up, it's like the sun, the brightest space, is like calling out to us, like, find the queen inside of you. Find your sovereign space inside of you. And honestly, that's kind of where we want to just like play in this space with you guys today, because this has been a journey for each of us that's super gorgeous. But sometimes, especially if you're at the beginning of this process of like, what is my soul essence? What does that feel like? How do I even touch into that? We're just going to share some of our stories around what that has looked like for each of us. So if I'm going to just like touch into that for me, part of why this feels so significant for me personally this morning is Juno was actually a huge piece in that. So if I want to jump just slightly before that story that I'll tell you briefly, when I was very, very first realizing like I've been living a lot of my life in my kind of heart up and kind of for other people, and it wasn't super conscious. It was like I was just kind of going through the motions. Life set me some pretty intense and grief filled scenarios that really called me into a space of like needing to slow down, needing to not socialize as much, needing to really like take more time than I normally would at home. And it was in that process that then it was like, okay, well, what do I feel like doing? That was like one of the very first things I started with. And so I was doing a lot of like learning about astrology in this season of my life. And that was a huge gate into like, wait a minute, there's this map of my soul that is here that I can learn. And I mean, it just captivated me. I just came alive in this energy. But in the other hand, at the same time, I really fell in love with my yoga practice. And it was the first time in my life that it wasn't like I was doing it because there was a rigidity or I felt like I had to. There was like a deep call and a longing for that silent space where I could move my body and I could feel like, oh, like my hips are tight. Oh, I can just like be with that. Or like, oh, I'm getting like, I have just carry so much tension and like the weight of the world and responsibility on my shoulders. And like yoga was just helping my physical body soften and integrate some of what I would be like reading in the early mornings as I'm like just so falling in love with my birth chart for the first time. So after this was a couple of years where it surprised me because I am not there is a tiny part of me that loves to follow the rules, but more bigger part of me is like I really don't. And so the fact that I was in such a rhythm with this dedication, it stacked on itself over time. And then the last piece I'll kind of drop in, obviously there's a million things here, but there was this moment where I realized that for me, this energy of Juno, this archetype, this mythos of Juno or Hera, she sits at the very top of my birth chart. And there was this awareness that came in a reading that I was receiving years ago, where like her presence came in as like, Erin, you are queen. And the other word with it was this word enchantress. Now, I'm not saying this in a way where like find the queen and the enchantress in you. Maybe, yes. But you will know when you've touched essence space when like something lands and you feel this, it's like there's this wash of just this peace and this knowing like there's something on this for me. That's a truth for me. And then from there, it's like it becomes this, and I'm Sagittarius, so I love anything adventure tone. But it was like this adventure of finding who is that? And then it was like carrying that into my day to day, this question of like, who is my essence? What does she feel like? What does she sound like? What is her opinion on the situation? And for a while, I didn't do anything about it. I just watched as the information would come in and kind of locked it away in my little secret chambers inside of me. But I like to call them little cosmic breadcrumbs because it is like one would come after the next, after the next, and there's all this synchronicity. And it was a full-blown homecoming to that soul space inside of me. So I think that's all I'll say for now on it. The last thing that this just dropping in is like, this doesn't need to be a chore or something hard. Like, this is self-discovery. This is an adventure. That's why the ancients said, like, know thyself. Like, there's like this mythic sort of quest pilgrimage energy on this that can be really, that in itself is so empowering because you feel like you're on an adventure to find you, to discover you. And I mean, it's just like the best thing ever to me has been coming home to her. So yeah, I'll pass it to you, Em, to see if there's anything anything trickling there.
That's so beautiful. And the merging of the discovery of your essence, your soul essence, while you are working the body at the same time is so important and so beautiful. And that's, yeah, since I'm a body worker, that's important too.
Yeah.
Living your soul through your body, right? Living ourselves through our expression through our bodies. For me, I my journey of this sovereignty,
Mm,
I was an external rule follower and an internal resistor. So I had this war happening constantly. Like I had a sense of what my soul wanted, but I was more concerned with keeping the peace out here as a Libra sun and someone from a toxic, dysfunctional family and religion. So it was more important for me to stay safe and keep everybody happy out here rather than follow what I was really thinking I knew about my essence here. And it
yeah.
wasn't until I was much older and had a couple of crash and burns that I was like, oh, wait, I've got to figure out how to bring my soul through these barriers of people pleasing and serving others and all of this stuff. So for me, I just needed permission that this
Mm,
essence that I knew was under here was valuable, and if I took the courage to like bring her forward a little bit more, that there might be somebody out there. It wouldn't be my immediate circle for fucking sure. They were not going to affirm that. But if I just needed to know that maybe somebody outside of my immediate circle might appreciate the me that was under there, especially as like a really powerful, I carry a lot of leadership quality. I carry a lot of, like strong, what we would consider a strong woman characteristic that isn't necessarily loved in the religion that I grew up in. You've got to find your ways of tucking your strength away and like hiding it somewhere else. So for me, one of the first ways that really helped me have permission to bring my essence, like get to know my essence and then bring it forward, was the 16 personalities Myers-Briggs test.
Wow. Yeah.
When I took that test and read, I'm an INFJ, and when I read it, I was like, oh my God, that's
Oh,
me. Like I can be that in the world. So that was the very first like real stamp of something just helped me put permission on my soul essence. So if you're kind of at the very beginning of your journey of like, who am I and what am I and can I bring me forward? 16 personalities might be a good option for you. But then the other pieces that would land and give me insight about like, oh, this is me. I can bring me forward even if it's really scary, was human design and
mm,
then astrology. And I had a lot to work through around astrology because of my religious upbringing, and I was taught to be really afraid of it. And I mean, all the things that I was taught to be afraid of, astrology was one of the bigger ones, the witchcraft around it. But literally, once I softened and really worked through and did my own study around what is astrology and how does it work, and when Erin said, finding that space where something lands and it feels like, oh, this is for me. I need to look at this. Astrology was one of those things when I had my first reading and I felt the accuracy of the energies and the essence of me being told to me by somebody who was just looking at my birth chart. I was like, okay, what the fuck? What is this? I need to, because that was me. When this person was reading that chart for me, I was like, yes, 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 that's me. And then to have somebody looking at just your chart and saying, I see this and this and this and this and this, and my essence was just like, somebody sees me and it's okay to be me. And then bringing that forward, this was a really, really big piece for me. Um, so, and then for me, adding the body piece in there was huge too. And I had a huge car accident, and that was like a moment for me where I got to choose, am I going to bring more of this soul essence forward into the world, or am I going to stay with these protectors and people pleasing and, staying small basically. And it was body work. I jumped into to heal. I jumped into craniosacral therapy and a really good massage therapist and qigong and acupuncture. And it was kind of all at the same time when astrology was coming in to my awareness, and I was really looking at the 16 personalities at that time. And I started to feel like, oh yeah, I can embody who my soul wants to be here in the world. So as we look at sovereignty and getting to know self, knowing thyself, and then embodying self in the world, it is a journey. And like Erin said, it's not a quick thing. Be curious, be playful. If you're in a really squashed space or you feel really controlled, then it's a little bit harder to have that playful tone on it. Like, but I encourage you to just keep asking, like, who am I? And don't do anything about it. Like Erin said, it's just like
yeah.
I watched myself for a long time, and it was questions like, if I didn't fear making people upset right now, what would I choose? Or if I didn't care about being a squeaky wheel, what would I choose? Or if I just kept asking myself so that I could gather that information inside of me, what would I do if I didn't worry about making people mad, or what would I say, or what would my answer be here? And the more I gathered the information, the more I was like, okay, I'm seeing who I really am. And then I started practicing bringing it forward. So wherever you're at on that journey of self-awareness and discovering your soul essence and bringing that into the world, be playful, be gentle, find people who can support you, do the body work, whether that's finding good practitioners or just starting a yoga practice at home or qigong. Um,
Mhm.
and then being sovereign of self, the Juno character
Yeah. Yeah.
characteristics that Erin brought in, like I couldn't stay with myself. That whole thing about don't abandon yourself, like really the first step is knowing yourself before you don't abandon yourself. Like, so so don't get that piece before the discovery of self. You can't hold yourself if you don't know who you are, and you can't stop abandoning yourself if you don't know what it is you're not abandoning. So really make that part of this journey of having fun with it. So those are
Gorgeous.
flips and pieces for me. Ginny, what's your story?
Um, so I would kind of go back to like after I got divorced, and I was, after that you're searching a bit. And
Yeah.
additionally, when you're enmeshed with somebody, at least for me, I went straight from like my family to being married. And what I've learned about myself over time is that I think I don't like the labels, but very empathic. Like I really am able to tune into others' feelings, but I didn't know even that I was. I almost interpret them as my own. Um, and so that's actually a really confusing place. I love what you said, Emmy, about you would externally, manage the environment, but internally you were connected. I didn't have a lot of even that internal connection. I couldn't always even hear my voice. It was the voice of other or the culture. And so, and of course, there were moments in my whole life that I've been connected. I think we all are in different ways. But um, I also, like both of you have said, I started an embodiment practice. I started doing quite a bit of yoga, and I had to be able to feel my body first, I think, before I could access the essence of my soul. Um, and I felt like I really lived my life up here before, and yoga helped me like feel myself. Like it was not safe to, I think we talked about that maybe on the first call that we did. And so to be able to learn through yoga to quiet the body, to listen to the body, to love my body, which had not ever um, been a thing for me, uh, that helped me like open up and hear better um, what I actually like me. Um, and then over the last few years, I've been working closely with Erin and Emmy, and that has been, I've learned so much from them. And one of my favorite things that I'll do is the like, you are you and I am me. And that helps me um, get less enmeshed with other.
Same.
Uh, And then the astrology piece has been really profound for me as well. I too had a lot of hangups with astrology just because of my background and my training education wise. And I still remember several years ago, I was like walking and I realized like all of my people, my close people, like are Libra suns or Libra rising. Like and it, it was uncanny, I guess, like how all of my close people, and that made me believe in it. It was just like oh, this is real. That there is something to it just because of my life. um so then I've loved learning about it over the last couple of years, and it has given me the permission as well to be like, oh, the people close to me have this energy, and I actually hold a little bit more like earth and fire, and that like it gives me the permission to hold that and to be me. And even like I too have had astrology readings and from Erin, and like we didn't know each other before I like first had the reading, and to be able to like open up actually to things that were true for me and my soul essence that I had never even touched. And it's still an exploration for me. And of course, there's some grief with that, right? That like over time, I haven't been connected to that and it's kind of been squashed by the environments I've been in. But it's also just the most fun, like, experience to open up to who you actually are. Um, and I think you have to create the safety in your body to be able to bring forward that soul essence. Um, so for me, it was kind of like a lot of different things all dropping in to access it. And it's still such a practice, right? It's not like I can touch it all day, every day, right? It's still like very much like coming back to it over and over again.
That's so gorgeous. I'm going to touch in just the creating the safety of the body to be able to
Yeah.
access, which I fully agree with in terms of nervous system, right? If we're in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn states, or PTSD, CPTSD, or you're living in a really hard scenario, you're in survival mode. And so we honor that, like take care of you. But if you have moved outside of any of your trauma, and it's important then to figure out, how do I slow my nervous system down? How do I create safety inside of myself? How do I bring myself into a rest state so that I can hear me and hear the energies that are around supporting me? And yeah, I'm glad you brought that in. I think that's a very, very important piece, which is where then the body work or being in nature, co-regulating with nature, um, co-regulating with a really safe practitioner, learning how to slow down and create safety inside of your own body is a really big, important piece to us discovering who we really are. And then, can I feel safe enough? Can I hold myself enough to bring myself into the world? Because that is fucking scary, period. And another book that I just want to bring in, if you haven't read Women Who Run with the Wolves, she gives so many maps for women on their individuation journey. And it can just encourage us in a huge way. How do I find me? How do I move through my initiations to being me in the world? So yeah,
So,
gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous.
so gorgeous.
It's a journey, and
Yeah.
it can be really fun. And then to find communities and sisterhood where we're sharing that exploration is even like cherry on top for me.
And I'm so aware too, like there's that phrase, ask and you shall receive, but it's real. So if this is totally new territory for you, even just setting the intention inside yourself, like, I want to know you, life will start to co create this process with you. And you will notice the synchronicities, the little cosmic breadcrumbs that just, I should come this way, that lead you right in to this body right here. And isn't that the whole entire freaking point of why we came to incarnate, to bring our spirits into these, home into these bodies? So,
Yeah.
beautiful.
Gorgeous. Before we close, anybody have any other thoughts dropping in? Hmm. This has been a fun conversation. We'll continue our sovereignty, getting to know ourselves, landing in our bodies, and then bringing ourselves more fully into the world in our womb wisdom and in our rootedness, and really in our power as women in the world. And that looks different for every single person. Everybody's flavor is different. So we honor that. Thank you, Ginny and Erin, for being my dearest soul sisters and being in this dialogue. And for those of you watching, thanks for tuning in. And we will be back. We're going to close this with 3 deep breaths. First breath, honor you. Second breath, honor other. And third breath, we're going to close this container, but we're going to stay connected in root and heart if you would like that. So deep breath in for your presence. Deep breath in for the other. And deep breath in to close this time together, staying connected in root and heart. Gorgeous. Thank you, thank you, thank you, my friends. I love you. Love you to you all
Oh,
watching.
mwah. Big love.
Mwah.
See you soon.
Bye.